So now in their travels, the Peacemaker and Hayawenta came to Onondaga territory. And when they came to the territory of the Onondaga, we were very warlike and we were very strong in the ways of war. And the Peacemaker came in and gave with the aid of Hayawenta, and they came in and they were talking about Gainas Hatgowa and this great message of peace. And the war chiefs of the Onondaga didn't want to hear it. They said, we're the great Onondaga warriors. We don't have to have peace because we're stronger than everyone. And they boasted about that. And they told the Peacemaker that they didn't want it. So the Peacemaker felt bad and went back to the camp and went back to his camp with Hayawenta. And they sat there, he sat there by their fire, and they were thinking about what to do. And as they were sitting there thinking, the Peacemaker had a great idea. And he decided to go back and have another meeting with the Onondaga. And in this meeting, he gave them a simple demonstration, and he took one single arrow and he showed those Onondaga war chiefs. He says, you see a single arrow, we can take it and break it, just snap it real easy like that, and it's broken. He said that if we take 5 arrows, if we were to take 5 arrows, let's pretend that these are arrows, and we put them together and we bind these arrows, tie them together with peace, and now we have this strong bundle. Now, he says, try and break it. And he says, give this to your strongest warrior. And their strongest warrior took it, and he couldn't break it. And the Peacemaker said, see there? There's peace. That's what peace will do if we're together. And he said that in unity, there's strength. And that you Onondaga chiefs can do us a great service. And instead of thinking this way, where if you get attacked from the west, somebody attacks you from over here, you have just your warriors to fight. Imagine if you had the warriors from all 5 of these nations, all of us, these other 4 nations, came to help you, and you, war chiefs, Onondaga war chiefs, had all of those warriors. Think of how strong you would be. Think of how much power and strength you would have. And all that we ask is that you be peaceful with everybody else. And that when we have war and go to war, if it affects all of us, that we have counsel and we talk about it and we work it out. And if it comes to war, you, Onondaga people, will be the doorkeepers. You'll be the keepers of the western door. And we'll say that everybody is in a house. Everybody is in a long house. And that everybody will be living in this long house of peace. And that each nation, each one of these nations will have their fire. And that each one will be able to have an equal say in what happens in this house. And that each one will look after their own business, but that as a group, we'll stick together and be united. And you Senecas can be the keepers of the western door of this house. And you will watch over the western door and be the guardians of the western door. And the Ganyan Gaonot people will be the guardians and watch over the eastern door of our house of peace. And the Onondaga chiefs agreed, and different nations started to agree and started to have interest in Guyana's Hatgowa. And they decided, maybe we should have this peace. Maybe we can be that way and have peace. Well, all was good and well except for Onondaga. The Onondaga weren't ready for that. Because of who? Because of Atataro. And Atataro still would not accept the message of peace. So they decided to go and talk to him again and go see him again. And this time they decided they would have people, leaders from each of the nations, and they would all go as a group to Atataro's island. And they all got together, and they all got to they got their canoes on the mainland, and they got ready to go over there. And they're going to paddle to go see Atataro. And they said that some of those guys were just going along with the group. And they really weren't strong-minded. And they really didn't believe in the great law. But they wanted to see what's going to happen. So they said that those leaders, when they got to the island, you could hear Atataro hollering from his nest and hollering, telling them to stay away because he knows they're coming. He used his evil mind and made it fierce storm again. And he's hollering and he's trying to keep them away using his dark magic and his dark mind. And they said that Atataro would holler so fierce that it could make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And that those chiefs that didn't believe stayed and they got scared. The ones that were strong mind and believed kept going. And they paddled across the water to his island, and they got on his island. And he hollered again. And they said that some other ones, maybe they were weaker still, they said, we'll stay here. And they were scared. They said that they started to sing a song of peace. And that this song of peace, they kept singing over and over. And this time they had with them long strings of wampum. And then they took that wampum and they ran it when they got up to him. And they're singing their song of peace. And they ran that wampum through Atataro's hair. And what they did was they removed the snakes from his hair. And they used their good magic and they used the power of wampum to ease his poison and to ease his mind. And they told him that we're going to give you a new name. And that it's true, you have great power. And they put on his head, a gustoet, and they changed his identity. And this gustoet had feathers on it. And they had the feathers of the great Onondat Gionot people. But one thing that was different was this headdress had deer antlers on it. And these deer antlers were a symbol of his duty. And they said that because the Onondaatje people live in the center of the confederacy of the group, that they will be the keepers of the Grand Council fire. And they restored Altataro, and they said that that name Altataro now won't exist. And because you're a new man, we're going to give you a new name. And you will preside, and you'll watch over, and you will keep the Grand Council fire at Onondaatje. And Atutaro's name was changed from Atutaro to the title of Tadadaho. And Tadadaho will be a great leader. And that when one person with that title should pass away, they'll lift up and raise a new man to have that title. And that it'll be his duty to look after that Grand Council fire. And it was a great day and a great time when this all happened. And it was decided that the Peacemaker and Hayawenta wanted everyone to have the people bring their weapons of war, bring the weapons of war to Onondaatje, and that we're going to have a great council and have a great meeting. And what they did was they took and dug a hole in the ground. So we'll say like this, they dug that big hole, and they had all the warriors stand around that great big hole, and they says, okay, when we give the signal, we want all you warriors to throw your war weapons in the hole. And they did. Some threw war clubs, maybe axes, knives, whatever their weapons of war were, they threw it in a hole. And he said, okay. And he's watching, the Peacemaker's watching, and you know, some of those young guys, they still had fire in their hearts. And he encouraged them. He says, okay, now I want you to throw also your bad feelings that you have for each other or towards each other. He says, I want you to use your mind, your good mind, and throw that in the hole too. And they did. And they said that when that was done, they buried it. And they covered it up. And they said, from now on, nobody can come along and dig up these weapons or these bad feelings. And we buried it under the ground. And to make sure nobody digs it up, we're going to plant a tree right on top. And this type of tree that we're going to plant is the long leaf or long needled white pine. Because the white pine, its roots grow to the four directions. And that'll be an invitation for all people to come and join and live in the shade of this great tree of peace. So the first ever tree of peace was planted. This white pine, our symbol, the symbol of this union with these 5 Haudenosaunee nations. And they say that if you look at a white pine and you look at the cluster of needles that grow on their branches, you'll see that they always come in clusters of 5. And that this is the symbol for the people to remember this peace and to remember that Gaianas Hatgo that says that everyone has the right to pursue a healthy mind, body, and spirit. And they say that that symbol, the peacemaker also put at the top, Jonyon Da, with the eagle as a lookout on the top of the white pine. And his job is, if anybody's coming with a bad mind to cause this tree harm, the eagle will scream and warn us. And I'm sure he did scream plenty of times in our history. But this symbol would be made into a wampum belt. And they would take those shell beads, those wampum shell beads, and make a pattern, make a design that would show it. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. And it's a belt of mostly purple beads. And it shows a symbol of, some say, that white pine, the tree of peace in the center. And then from there, on each side, it shows symbols like this, these rectangular symbols. And there are still people that keep these wampum belts and that they can use them and read them, same as you or I would read a wampum keepers have the job of maintaining it. And you know, these symbols all have meaning. And this belt design, nowadays you see it all over. And you know, this whole story of the Peacemaker is recorded in this pictographic symbol. So instead of writing words, our people, you know, so many people have used pictures to tell our story and to keep our history. And the total background of this belt is made from the purple spots made into beads from those clamshells. And that the way it goes is that each symbol represents a different nation. So as we look at it, over here we have the Gunyat, the people of the Flint or the Mohawk Nation. That this symbol represents their people and their territory. And here we see the path of the Peacemaker as he came there. And he traveled from the east to the west. And as he's traveling, he came next to the territory and people of the Otneotga Nation, the people of the Standing Stone, or the Oneida people. And this symbol stands for their people and their territory. And that as he traveled, we see his path as he goes from there to Onondaga, where that first tree of peace was planted, and where the Grand Council fire is kept, and where Tadadaho presides over it and keeps that place clean for when we have our Grand Council. And if the people should not agree, they would settle it with their good mind. And as we travel further towards the east, we come to the territory and the symbol of the Gayungwihana people, the Swampy Land people, or the Cayuga Nation. And that this symbol represents the place, the territory, and people of their nation. And again, working our way towards the west, we come to Onondaga territory. And as we come to Onondaga territory, this symbol, the westernmost symbol, stands for that place, that land, and the people of the Onondaga, the people of the Great Hill, or the Senecas. And this whole story, which is just a very short version of it, as I said, could take 4 days to tell every detail. And the details would be much greater, especially if it's told in one of our languages. because English is limited compared to a native language, especially if you describe something. Of our history and of our people. And this symbol that you've seen tells that story. So it is an important symbol to us. And I used to hear old timers say that it's too important, that it's too sacred, that it means more than something that should be put on a bumper sticker or even a water tower, painted on a water tower. And it's up to us, it's up to you, young people, to decide. But I think like that, and I agree with that. I don't use it for just things that are very, very important. Maybe is the only place and only time that it's appropriate to use it, because it is our history and who we are, tells about where we come from. Even the names of the people describe our place on the earth. So that's one version of the Peacemaker story. Taneha.